Carl Gustav Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who founded analytical dark psychology. Born in 1875, he is best known for his groundbreaking theories on the two faces, unconscious mind, archetypes, spirit animals, and much more. And this is what we will discuss in this video. Get ready for the journey into the basics of dark psychology. Understanding these will create a dark gravity in you automatically. And believe it or not, it'll make you unbelievably powerful that others can't ignore. Chapter 1. The masks we wear. Think of it like this. The persona is the clothing you wear for different weather conditions. You wouldn't walk into a snowstorm without a coat, but you also wouldn't let that coat convince you that it's part of your skin. It means understanding when to wear the coat, when to take it off, and what your core looks like underneath. It's less about ditching the facade and more about aligning it with your authentic self. That's where Jung and philosophy like Stoicism really intersect. Self-knowledge is just the first step. Living in harmony with that knowledge is the real goal. So does it just mean know the real you? In a way, yes, but it's more nuanced than that. The concept of the persona isn't just about self-awareness. It's about balance. It's about realizing that your external self is a construct for navigating society, while your inner self, the real you, exists beneath it. The idea aligns beautifully with Robert Greene's Law 38 from the 48 Laws of Power. Think as you like, but behave like others. This law emphasizes the strategic use of the persona. In essence, it's about blending in outwardly while keeping your true thoughts and identity guarded. The world rewards conformity on the surface, but respects individuality in substance. The persona isn't inherently bad. Think of it as armor in a battlefield where roles and rules constantly shift. It's how we play our parts, professional at work, empathetic with loved ones, humorous among friends. Without it, life would be chaos, like a painter without a canvas. But problems arise when we only live through the persona. Over time, we might forget who we are behind it. An over-identified persona leads to an existential hollow, a growing void that whispers questions like, "Am I really this person?" This disconnection often surfaces subtly. Maybe it's the exhaustion of pretending to be extroverted when you're deeply introverted, or perhaps it's the quiet alienation of forcing politeness while anger boils beneath the surface. The persona is supposed to be a tool, not a cage, yet it can imprison us when we mistake it for the essence of who we are. Philosophically, the Stoics teach us to embrace authenticity, yet they also value adaptability. Epictetus might ask, why fret over the judgments of others when their impressions are fleeting and external? Balance is key. The persona should serve us, not enslave us. Modern psychology has explored this tension. Opposite, though. A study in 2015, Brunel found that people with incongruence between their internal self and external persona often experience increased stress and dissatisfaction in relationships. Why? Because living a double life, even metaphorically, wears thin on the psyche. Balance is the key. I show all the negatives and positives. You choose your move. Jung's persona echoes this principle. It's the mask we wear to adapt to society's expectations without losing touch with our inner truth. The Stoic undertone here reminds us to remain rooted in our authentic selves while skillfully navigating external demands. The key is mastery. Use the mask to function effectively, but never let it cloud your inner judgment or betray your core beliefs. In summary, the persona isn't a betrayal of self, but a necessary strategy. Think freely, stay true to your essence, but act with wisdom in a world that often favors appearances over authenticity. Chapter 2. The Shadow. What parts of yourself have you buried? The pieces you've labeled unacceptable or ugly. Where do they go? Jung calls this the shadow, the unconscious repository of traits, emotions, and desires we deny. It's not just where your anger or envy hides. It's also where your untapped creativity, confidence, and raw potential might be languishing. The shadow is your disowned self, waiting to be seen, heard, and reconciled. From childhood, we learn what's acceptable based on family, culture, and society. Traits that don't fit this mold, whether they're aggression, sadness, or even boldness, are cast into the shadow. But what's repressed doesn't disappear. It festers. The shadow manifests through projection when we attribute our unwanted traits to others. Have you ever judged someone harshly, only to realize maybe much later that they reflected something you feared or disliked about yourself? That's the shadow at work. Fight the shadow with 1. Acknowledgement. Seeing the shadow. The first step is becoming aware of the shadow's existence. Jung believed that most people are blind to their shadow because it resides in the unconscious. It's often easier to spot the shadow in others before recognizing it within ourselves. Projection. Attributing your denied traits to someone else serves as a red flag. For instance, if you're overly critical of someone's arrogance, it might hint at your own unacknowledged pride. Jung saw these moments as opportunities to turn inward and reflect. 2. Exploration, facing the darkness. Once acknowledged, the shadow must be explored. This often involves reflecting on suppressed feelings, desires, and traits. Jung encouraged tools like dream analysis, where symbols in dreams often represent shadow elements trying to surface. He also supported active imagination, a technique where individuals consciously engage with their inner world through visualization or dialogue with shadow aspects. For Jung, this wasn't just an intellectual exercise. It was an emotional and experiential confrontation. 3. Integration, becoming whole. The ultimate goal is integration, not suppression. This means accepting the shadow as part of yourself, reclaiming its rejected traits, and harmonizing it with the conscious self. Integration doesn't mean acting on destructive impulses. It means recognizing them without shame and channeling their energy positively. For example, suppressed aggression might transform into assertiveness or determination. Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward becoming a complete, authentic self. Philosophically, this is where Stoicism offers a unique counterbalance. While Jung advocates our integration of the shadow, the Stoics emphasize mastering it. Marcus Aurelius advises, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. B1. Psychology reinforces this. A study by Safran and Segal, 1990, revealed that addressing unconscious emotions leads to greater emotional regulation and mental well-being. Ignoring or suppressing these feelings, however, risks depression, anxiety, or even physical stress responses. This is why engaging with your shadow is not a luxury. It's a necessity. This isn't about suppressing your darker impulses, but confronting, transforming them with reason and discipline. To a Stoic, the shadow isn't an enemy. It's a challenge to refine your character. To embrace the shadow isn't to indulge it, it's to understand it. Think of it like mining for gold in a cave. You'll find dirt and darkness, but also something valuable. By shining a light on these neglected parts of yourself, you can reclaim what you've lost: creativity, resilience, and emotional freedom. Your shadow isn't your downfall, it's your teacher. Confront it with courage, and you'll uncover a deeper, truer version of you. Chapter 3. The Anima and Animus. Who lives in your mind as your opposite? Jung introduces us to the anima and animus, the archetypes of the feminine in men and the masculine in women. They are not just reflections of the opposite gender. They are bridges between the conscious and unconscious, doorways to creativity, understanding, and transformation. But like any powerful force, they require balance to avoid chaos. The anima in men and animus in women are shaped by early experiences with figures of the opposite sex, parents, siblings, friends. These interactions form an inner image of the other that continues to evolve throughout life. For men, the anima is the essence of femininity, nurturing, intuitive, emotional. For women, the animus is the embodiment of masculinity, logical, assertive. Jung believed these archetypes influence not just how we relate to others, but also how we connect with our own unconscious mind. However, things get complicated when these archetypes are either suppressed or over-idealized. A man who rejects his anima may struggle with emotions or empathy, becoming rigid or emotionally detached. A woman denying her animus might fear ambition or decision-making, leaning into passivity. Conversely, over-identifying with these archetypes can lead to unhealthy projections, seeing others as perfect embodiments of the inner ideal and becoming disillusioned when reality falls short. Psychology supports this idea of integration. Studies on emotional intelligence, Salvi and Meyer, 1990, revealed that balanced individuals, those who blend masculine traits like assertiveness with feminine traits like empathy, are better at navigating relationships and challenges. This balance reflects a healthy interplay of anima and animus, creating inner stability. One of Jung's primary concerns was the tendency to project the anima or animus onto others. For example, a man might project his anima onto a partner, idealizing her as the perfect embodiment of his inner feminine image. This can lead to disillusionment when the partner inevitably fails to match the projection. Similarly, a woman might project her animus onto a figure of authority, whether positively idolizing them or negatively seeing them as a controlling force. These projections distort reality and hinder personal growth, as they externalize traits that need to be integrated internally. Jung often explored the anima and animus through symbols in dreams, myths, and art. These archetypes might appear as figures, voices, or presences in dreams, representing the unconscious striving for balance. This includes spirit animals. Jung encouraged engaging with these symbols through active imagination, a technique where individuals visualize and interact with their inner figures to better understand their influence. Integration through self-awareness. Jung believed the solution lay in integrating the anima and animus into conscious awareness. This means recognizing these archetypes not as external forces, but as inner aspects of oneself. For example, a man might engage with his anima by exploring his emotions, dreams, or creative pursuits, rather than dismissing them as irrelevant. A woman might develop her animus by asserting her opinions, setting boundaries, or pursuing intellectual challenges. By integrating these archetypes, individuals gain greater psychological balance and wholeness, reducing inner conflict and fostering self-realization. Symbolic representation. For Jung, the anima and animus were essential players in the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming a whole and integrated person. Their integration represents a union of opposites within the psyche, helping individuals move beyond one-sidedness and embrace their full potential. The ultimate goal, individuation. Jung's approach was deeply nuanced. He didn't reduce the anima and animus to simplistic gender roles, but saw them as dynamic, evolving aspects of the psyche, deeply personal, yet universal in their symbolic power. Chapter 4. Conscious and Unconscious. Symbols are more than mere representations or abstract concepts. In Jungian psychology, they are powerful tools that facilitate healing, growth, and self-awareness. They act as bridges between the conscious and unconscious realms, providing us with insights into the deeper layers of our psyche. To understand how symbols can heal, we must first acknowledge that the mind is not a simple linear entity, but a vast, interconnected system, rich with uncharted territory. The healing power of symbols. Jung saw symbols as vital for the individuation process because they offer a way to translate the language of the unconscious into something the conscious mind can grasp. These symbols are not random. They hold deep meaning and often appear in dreams, art, and personal experiences. Each symbol carries an archetypal significance, representing a universal truth or life pattern that, when properly understood, can lead to profound healing. For instance, mandalas, circular symbols that often represent wholeness and the self, can have a particularly therapeutic effect. When a person is lost or fragmented, drawing or meditating on a mandala can bring about a sense of inner balance and unity. In essence, the symbol offers a reflection of the deeper self that is not fully conscious but longed for. Dreams as the language of the unconscious. One of the most significant ways in which symbols appear is through dreams. Jung believed that dreams are the unconscious mind's natural way of communicating with the conscious mind. In dreams, the unconscious expresses its deepest truths, fears, desires, and conflicts in symbolic form. These symbols are not mere nonsense. They are meaningful representations of the inner world, and by analyzing them, we can unlock important insights about our emotional and psychological state. For example, a dream of water might symbolize the flow of emotions or unconscious feelings. Fire could represent transformation, purification, or repressed rage. The interpretation of such symbols depends on the context of the dreamer's life and psyche, but Jung believed that all symbols in dreams are significant and worth exploring. The challenge, however, is to avoid reducing symbols to simplistic meanings. Jung cautioned against falling into the trap of rigid interpretations, like saying a snake always means danger. Instead, it's subjective. What does this snake mean to you? This approach acknowledges the unique context of the individual and respects the fluidity of the unconscious. Myths, archetypes, and healing. In addition to personal symbols, Jung also emphasized the role of archetypes, universal symbols that appear in myths, folklore, and even religious traditions across cultures. These archetypes represent fundamental human experiences, such as birth, death, love, power, and transformation. By connecting with these archetypes, individuals can access timeless wisdom that resonates with their own struggles and growth. Take the archetype of the hero in mythology, for example. The hero's journey often mirrors our own psychological and spiritual journey of individuation. We face trials, confront fears, and ultimately emerge transformed. The hero's journey serves as a guide to overcoming life's obstacles and realizing one's potential. You might see aspects of yourself reflected in the mythic battles and triumphs, helping you gain clarity on your personal challenges. Art and rituals as symbolic healing. Beyond dreams and myths, art and rituals serve as powerful symbols for healing. Art allows individuals to express unconscious material in a tangible form, giving shape to feelings, fears, and desires that may be difficult to articulate with words. Through painting, sculpture, music, or writing, we can channel unconscious energy into creative outlets, which can facilitate emotional release and self-discovery. Similarly, rituals, whether religious, spiritual, or personal, serve as symbolic acts that reconnect us to deeper truths. Rituals are ways of honoring cycles of life and death, marking transitions, or celebrating personal victories. By engaging in rituals, we create a safe space for the unconscious to express itself, and the symbolic actions allow for emotional and psychological healing. Jung often pointed to the power of active imagination, which involves consciously engaging with symbols through creative activities. By embodying and interacting with symbols, whether in art or imagination, we can dialogue with the unconscious and work through internal conflicts. Symbols as mirrors, reflection, and transformation. Ultimately, symbols act as mirrors of the psyche, reflecting back to us truths that we may not be ready to confront, but which are necessary for healing. They invite us into a deeper relationship with ourselves, encouraging us to step beyond the limitations of the rational mind and embrace the complexity of our inner worlds. These symbols can be uncomfortable at first, as they often reveal aspects of ourselves that we have long ignored or repressed. But through this confrontation, transformation becomes possible. Just as a sculptor chips away at a block of marble to reveal the form within, the symbols we encounter help us chip away at the walls we've built around ourselves, unveiling a more authentic, integrated self. Integrating symbols into daily life. Challenge, of course, is not simply recognizing the symbols, but integrating their wisdom into our everyday lives. Jung believed that we should not treat symbols as isolated experiences or mere curiosities, but as living forces that guide us on our journey of individuation. To integrate the power of symbols, we must remain open to their lessons, which often come in subtle forms, whether in dreams, creative expression, or the symbols we encounter in our daily lives. We must remain alert to the quiet whispers of the unconscious, which often speak in symbolic language. By doing so, we create the space for healing and transformation to take place, not in dramatic external ways, but in the quiet depths of our inner lives, where the seeds of change are quietly growing. Symbols are not just decorative elements. They are the messengers of our psyche. They invite us to engage in the work of self-healing, not through force or suppression, but through understanding and integration. By following the path these symbols lay before us, we can unlock the wisdom of our unconscious, heal old wounds, and continue the journey of becoming our truest selves. Chapter 5. Becoming Whole. What does it mean to become yourself? Not just to play a role, wear a mask, or hide behind the shadows of your past, but to truly step into your own unique essence. This is the crux of individuation, a concept Jung explored in depth. Individuation is the process of integrating all parts of the psyche, the persona, the shadow, the anima, or animus, into a cohesive whole. This process leads us toward what Jung called the self, the central unified core of our personality, the core of who we are. The self is not just another aspect of the psyche. It is the culmination of all parts of who we are. It represents balance, the integration of opposites, and the realization of our full potential. Imagine it as the center of a wheel, where every spoke, your persona, your shadow, your anima or animus, and all other unconscious forces, comes together in harmony. Unlike the fragmented, often disconnected sense of self we might experience in everyday life, self is a more complete, whole version of who we are. It's the integration of every side of us, both the parts we embrace and those we'd rather ignore. The journey toward the self. Achieving the self is a lifelong process. It's not something that happens overnight, nor can it be reached by simply focusing on one part of the psyche. Instead, the self emerges as we become aware of and accept all aspects of our being. This is where individuation comes into play, Jung's term for the journey of self-realization. It's about facing your unconscious, confronting your fears and desires, and embracing the full spectrum of human experience. The process requires us to wrestle with our contradictions, our flaws, our dark sides, and our potential for growth. The mandala, a symbol of wholeness. Jung often used the image of the mandala, a circle with geometric patterns, during his work on the self. The mandala is a universal symbol of wholeness, representing the idea that all parts of life and psyche must come together in harmony. Jung saw mandalas as symbols that appear naturally in our dreams and artwork when we are on the path of individuation. For Jung, seeing a mandala or similar symbols in dreams was an indication that we were progressing towards psychological integration. The process is about creating unity within ourselves, where opposites like light and dark, masculine and feminine, good and bad, no longer conflict but coexist as integral parts of who we are. The paradox of the self. One of the most profound ideas Jung proposed was that achieving the self requires us to accept paradox. The self isn't about being perfect in the traditional sense. Instead, it's about balancing the contradictions within us. To live fully, we must accept both our strengths and our flaws, our desires and our restraints, and our light and dark sides. It's about embracing the tension between opposites, something that Stoic philosophy deeply aligns with. Stoicism teaches us to accept what we cannot control and to focus our efforts on our inner growth. Similarly, Jung's journey of individuation encourages us to reconcile the contradictions within, making peace with what we are and what we're not. Both philosophies show us that true strength comes from integration and acceptance, not from trying to control or eliminate parts of ourselves. The shadow of the self. In this process of self-realization, there's always an element of mystery. The self is both known and unknown, conscious and unconscious. The more we uncover, the more we realize there's always more to discover. This journey is endless, an unfolding spiral that takes us deeper into the complexity of our psyche. Rather than chasing an idealized version of ourselves, Jung suggests we focus on the journey itself, the constant process of becoming. The self is not a destination, but a direction. It's the work of continually integrating our inner contradictions, embracing our complexity, and moving toward a greater understanding of who we truly are. Integrating the self into life. Jung's ultimate message about the self is that we don't need to be perfect or fully realized all at once. Instead, we must accept the fragments, the pieces of us that we're still discovering. As we integrate these aspects, we move closer to becoming the person we were always meant to be. The self isn't a fixed state. It's a continuous process, a never-ending journey toward wholeness. And perhaps, in the end, this is what true peace looks like, finding harmony within the chaos, embracing every part of our existence, and walking the path of self-discovery without fear. Thanks for watching.